The unexpected moment the night was filled with lights, cameras, and voices. Hollywood had gathered once again for a major award show, a place where stories of fame often overshadowed stories of the heart. Yet, hidden among the glitter and sound, something rare was about to happen, something no one in the audience could have imagined. Keanu Reeves walked through the red carpet with his usual calmness. He was different from the others around him. While many posed for attention, he carried himself with humility, almost shy, as if he wanted to escape the noise rather than embrace it. For decades, he had been the same kind, gentle, and yet guarded. The crowd adored him, but few truly knew the weight he carried inside. In another part of the hall, Sandra Bullock made her entrance. Her presence was bright, her smile genuine, her laughter soft yet strong enough to turn heads. She had always been the kind of star who reminded people of home rather than distance. But tonight, she felt something stirring deep inside, a sense that the evening would not end as ordinary. As the event went on, speeches were made, awards handed out, laughter echoed through the hall. Keanu kept to himself, his words brief, his expressions modest. Sandra, seated not far from him, noticed the way he looked around the room, not with pride, but with quiet thought. She had worked with him years ago, shared laughter with him on set, and respected his silence even when the world demanded noise. But tonight, something inside her wanted to break that silence. The turning point came when a sudden pause fell over the crowd. Two award winners on stage called Keanu and Sandra to join them for a moment, praising their work in film and the inspiration they gave to others. As they both rose and walked toward the stage, the audience cheered. But then, in front of everyone, something unplanned happened. As Sandra reached the stairs, she stumbled slightly. Instinctively, Keanu moved forward, his hands reaching to steady her. The touch was small, but it carried 30 years of hidden emotion between them. Their eyes met. For a second, the hall seemed to disappear. Flashes stopped mattering, voices blurred, and all that remained was the quiet recognition of two souls who had walked different paths, but always carried a strange, unspoken bond. Without thinking, Sandra leaned closer and wrapped her arms around him in an unexpected hug. It was not rehearsed, not staged, not for the cameras. It was raw, human, and filled with a kind of warmth that even Hollywood could not script. The crowd erupted in applause. The hug lasted only a few seconds, but for Keanu, it felt like time stood still. He had carried loneliness for years, hidden behind kindness, protecting a fragile heart from more loss. And yet, in that hug, something cracked inside him. It was not pain, it was release. The cameras flashed wildly, and the world would soon talk about this moment. But for Keanu, it was not about the audience. It was about Sandra's arms holding him when he least expected it. It was about feeling, maybe for the first time in years, that someone saw past the walls he had built. When they pulled apart, Sandra gave him a soft smile. Her eyes carried a message he could not ignore: you are not alone. The rest of the night blurred for Keanu. People congratulated him, reporters asked questions, but his mind was somewhere else. That hug had shaken his 30-year silence. He returned home late. Sitting in the stillness of his room, he thought of Sandra, of her warmth, of the truth hidden behind her glance. For years, he had believed his heart was too guarded to feel again. But now, with one hug, he felt something he thought was lost forever: hope. The world reacts morning after the award show. Hollywood woke up to headlines that no one could ignore. Newspapers, magazines, and social media all carried the same images: Sandra Bullock embracing Keanu Reeves on stage. The photos spread across the world in seconds. The hug was everywhere, trending hashtags, television debates, online discussions. People wrote about how raw and emotional it felt, how different it looked compared to the usual staged moments of Hollywood. Yet for Keanu, it was not a headline. It was something deeper. He sat at his small kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at the news on his phone. The cameras had captured the hug, but they could never capture what he felt inside. For the first time in decades, someone had touched the silence he carried. His phone buzzed with messages. Friends teased him kindly, fans cheered him on, journalists requested interviews. He ignored them all. His heart was still trying to understand what had happened. Later that day, Sandra called. Her voice was soft, calm, but there was something underneath it. "Keanu," she said, "the world won't stop talking about it. Maybe we should meet." They agreed to see each other away from the noise, in a quiet cafe tucked into a quiet street where cameras rarely followed. When Keanu arrived, He saw her sitting by the window, dressed simply, no makeup, no sparkle, just herself. It reminded him again why she had always stood out in Hollywood. She was real. When he sat down, there was a long silence between them. Neither rushed to fill it. Then Sandra spoke. That hug. It wasn't planned, Keanu. It just happened. He nodded slowly, his voice low. I know, but it meant something to me. Her eyes softened. To me too. The words hung in the air, heavier than the sound of cups clinking around them. Keanu looked at her and felt a wave of emotions he had locked away for too long. Part of him wanted to stay silent, to guard himself as always. But another part of him, the part that trembled when she hugged him, wanted to speak. I've spent so many years building walls, he confessed. Silence was easier, safer, but that moment, it reminded me that maybe it's not too late to feel again. Sandra reached across the table, her fingers brushing against his hand. It was a small gesture, but it carried the same truth as the hug. You don't have to carry everything alone, Keanu. You never did. He lowered his eyes, fighting back the heaviness in his chest. The cafe was quiet, but inside him, storms raged. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to let her in, but fear of loss still lived inside him. Before he could answer, a man nearby recognized them. Within minutes, phones were lifted, cameras aimed. The hush of the cafe broke into whispers and clicks. Keanu sighed, leaning back. This is why I keep my distance. The world doesn't let us be human. Sandra looked at him, firm yet kind. Let them talk. What matters is what's true between us. Her words struck him. They were simple, but they carried the one thing he had long denied himself: permission to be human again. As they left the cafe, the noise followed, but Keanu felt something new. The world might twist their hug into stories, but deep inside, he knew this was no script. It was real, and real was something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. The weight of silence. The following days were a storm. Every news outlet replayed the hug, every magazine printed pictures of them together, and every talk show host asked the same question: what does this mean? Keanu tried to continue his life quietly. He went for his usual walks, visited bookstores, smiled politely when fans approached. But everywhere he turned, people whispered about him and Sandra. His silence, once a shield, now felt like a heavy chain. One evening, he sat in his home. The lights dim, the city humming outside his window. He thought about the past, about the people he had lost, the grief that had shaped his life. He had convinced himself that keeping distance was the only way to survive. But now, with Sandra's hug, with her words in the cafe, the truth gnawed at him. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't headlines or reporters. It was a message from Sandra. I'm worried about you. Come see me. He hesitated, fear rising inside him. Part of him wanted to disappear, to retreat behind the silence that had kept him safe for so long. But another part, the part that trembled when she touched his hand, told him to go. That night, he drove to her home. When she opened the door, she didn't greet him with words. She simply looked at him, her eyes filled with warmth and concern. Inside, they sat on her couch. Minutes passed in silence until Keanu finally spoke. His voice was low, broken. I don't know how to do this, Sandra. I don't know how to let go of the fear. She turned toward him, steady as always. Fear doesn't disappear, Keanu, but you don't have to face it alone. His throat tightened. I've lost too much. I don't want to lose again. Her voice softened, but her words cut through his walls. You haven't lost everything. You're here. I'm here. Sometimes that's enough to begin again. Keanu looked into her eyes, and for a moment, he let himself feel. He felt the years of silence pressing against his chest, the weight of grief, the ache of loneliness. And then he felt her presence, steady, real, unshaken. But before he could answer, a sound interrupted. A knock at the door. Sandra frowned, stood up, and opened it. Outside stood two reporters, cameras ready, voices loud. Keanu, Sandra, can we ask about the hug? Are you together? Flashes filled the living room as they tried to step inside. Sandra quickly closed the door, her hand shaking slightly. Keanu stood frozen, the old fear rising again. This was exactly what he had run from all his life, the world tearing into private moments, turning truth into spectacle. He whispered, almost to himself, this is why I hide. They don't care about the heart, only the story. Sandra walked back to him, her expression firm. Then don't let them control the story. Don't let fear control you. Her words struck him like a spark. He realized the truth he had spent so long hiding from the world, that he had also hidden from himself. He looked at her, his eyes heavy with unshed tears. But what if opening my heart only breaks it again? She stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his. Then at least it broke for something real. The silence between them was deep, filled with emotion neither could escape. Keanu felt the walls around his guarded heart trembling once more, closer to collapse than ever before. The breaking point night after the reporters appeared at Sandra's door, Keanu could not sleep. He walked through his home with slow steps, every shadow reminding him of the past he carried. Silence had always been his shield, but now it felt like a cage. He kept hearing her words over and over in his mind. Don't let fear control you. The next morning, he tried to return to normal. He visited a small bookstore, hoping to find peace among shelves and quiet pages. But even there, whispers followed him. The strangers at the counter spoke softly, yet loud enough for him to hear. Do you think they're together? That hug looked so real. Another voice added, Keanu deserves happiness. Maybe she's the one. He left quickly, his heart pounding. For years he had been known for kindness, humility, respect. Now people wanted to know his private truth. He was not ready, yet he also knew he couldn't hide forever. Later that day, Sandra invited him to join her at a charity event. She said it would be small, quiet, away from the chaos. Keanu hesitated, but something inside him pushed him to go. When he arrived, he saw children playing, families gathered, laughter filling the air. Sandra was in the center of it, her smile bright, her energy lifting everyone around her. When she saw him, she waved gently. As the event continued, Keanu found himself talking with children, listening to their dreams, their struggles. One young girl told him how she wanted to be strong like him because she had read about his kindness. His heart ached. He realized how much people saw him as hope, even when he felt broken inside. When the event ended, Sandra pulled him aside. Her voice was soft, yet steady. Keanu, you don't have to be afraid of the world. You just have to be honest with them, with me, with yourself. He looked at her, torn. I don't know if I can. I've lived in silence so long. I don't know how to break it. She reached for his hand, holding it firmly. Then let me help you. We don't have to hide from each other. The moment was tender, but suddenly interrupted. A photographer appeared, camera raised, shouting their names. Flashes burst into the quiet evening. Sandra tightened her grip on his hand, but Keanu froze. Memories of the past came rushing back. Loss, grief, the relentless eyes of the world. He pulled back slightly, his fear stronger than his courage. Sandra looked at him, her eyes filled with both pain and patience. You can walk away if you need to, Keanu. But if you do, you're not running from them, you're running from yourself. Her words pierced him. He stood still, caught between two choices. To keep guarding his heart, safe but lonely, or to let it open, fragile but alive. The flashes continued, voices shouted. The world demanded answers, and Keanu knew he could no longer stand in silence. The breaking point had arrived. The confession begins. Flashes outside the charity event felt endless. Each burst of light struck Keanu like thunder. His instinct was to step back, to retreat into the comfort of silence he had carried for 3 decades. But then he felt Sandra's hand still reaching for him, steady and waiting. He looked at her, and for the first time, he saw not Hollywood, not reporters, not the crowd, only her eyes. There was no judgment in them, no demand, only trust. His heart pounded. I can't do this, he whispered, more to himself than to her. Sandra leaned closer, her voice firm but gentle. You can, but only if you want to live, Keanu. Only if you want to stop hiding. The words struck him deep. He realized she was right. His silence had kept him safe, but it had also kept him from living. Slowly, he tightened his grip on her hand, and in that small act, something broke inside him. He turned toward the flashing cameras. His voice trembled, but he spoke. Please, no questions tonight. We are not here for Hollywood. We are here for something bigger. The crowd hushed. For once, the voices of reporters grew quiet. He looked back at Sandra. She gave him a nod, encouraging him to go on. Keanu took a deep breath. For years, I have carried silence. People see me smile. They see kindness, but they don't see the grief. I lost much in my life, and I thought if I stayed quiet, if I kept my heart guarded, maybe I could survive. But then, his voice cracked, his eyes glistening as he looked at Sandra. One hug reminded me that silence is not living. It is only hiding. The crowd was stunned. The man known for his privacy was finally breaking his silence, not on a stage, not in a movie, but in the middle of a simple night beside a woman who had reached him when no one else could. Sandra placed her hand gently on his arm, grounding him. "You don't have to say everything now," she whispered. "Just enough to free yourself." He nodded slowly, breathing deeply. "I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know how the world will twist this. But I know one thing: I don't want to keep hiding my heart anymore." For the first time in years, the crowd did not see just Keanu the star. They saw Keanu the man, vulnerable, raw, and human. The photographers lowered their cameras for a moment. Silence filled the space, but it was not the silence Keanu had carried. It was a silence of respect. After a few moments, Sandra guided him away from the crowd. They walked together down a quiet street, hand in hand. Neither spoke, but both knew something had changed. When they reached her car, Keanu finally broke the silence. "Thank you, Sandra. I don't know if I could have done this without you." She smiled, her eyes soft. "You didn't do it for me, Keanu. You did it for yourself." He felt his chest lighten, as if years of weight had finally lifted. Yet he also knew this was not the end. The world would ask questions, demand answers, twist their story. But for once, he felt ready. The heart opened morning after his words at the charity event. The world exploded. Headlines spread fast. Keanu Reeves finally speaks. The hug that changed Hollywood. Keanu and Sandra, more than friends. Keanu expected the noise, but what surprised him were the messages. People from around the world wrote not about gossip, but about courage. Fans said his honesty gave them strength to face their own pain. Strangers thanked him for reminding them that silence can be broken. He sat quietly in his home, reading message after message, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man carrying grief alone. He felt seen. Later that day, Sandra visited. She walked into his living room with her usual easy smile, carrying the cups of coffee. "You handled last night with grace," she said softly. Keanu shook his head, a shy smile touching his lips. "I just spoke what I had been holding for too long." They sat together in the quiet. Outside, the city roared, but inside, the air was calm. After a long silence, Keanu looked at her, his voice low but steady. "Sandra, I've spent 30 years locking my heart. I thought silence kept me safe, but you showed me that it only kept me from living. I don't want to live like that anymore." Her eyes softened, glistening with quiet emotion. "Then don't. Let yourself feel. Let yourself live." He took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "I don't know what tomorrow brings, but if there's someone I trust to walk with me into it, it's you." Her lips curved into a gentle smile. She reached for his hand, holding it firmly. "Then let's walk together." In that moment, the walls Keanu had carried for 3 decades finally fell. Not with grand speeches, not with dramatic scenes, but with the simple truth of connection. An unexpected hug had broken the silence, and now honesty had opened the door to something greater. Weeks later, at another public event, the world watched again. Reporters expected guarded smiles, polite refusals, and silence. Instead, Keanu walked hand in hand with Sandra, calm and unshaken. Flashes filled the air. But this time, he didn't hide. He stood before the crowd, his voice strong but humble. "I've lived much of my life behind walls, but I've learned that silence is not strength. Strength is allowing yourself to be human, to feel, to love. I am grateful to have found that again." The crowd erupted, not with gossip, but with respect. The moment was no longer about Hollywood, it was about humanity. Later that night, when the lights faded and the noise quieted, Keanu and Sandra sat side by side, looking out at the stars. He leaned back, a rare peace filling his chest. "Funny," he said softly, "all it took was one hug." Sandra smiled, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. Sometimes the smallest moments change everything. Keanu closed his eyes, breathing deeply. For the first time in 30 years, his heart was open, free, and unafraid.